Hey, everybody. We're here for Post Status today, and my guest is McCarthy. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. It's a Monday morning and it's sunny, so I can't complain.
You must not be in Rochester, New York, where it is very overcast and snowing right now.
Oh gosh. No.
But that's okay. It is winter here. We're used to it. It is what it is.
Mhm.
But it's always good to see you. And it's always good to talk about all the really cool things that you're doing. And I like to think some of the things I'm doing and some of the things that we're kind of promoting together and those kinds of things. So yeah, this is very exciting. I'm glad to have you here and exciting to talk about this. Uh, Last year, it's almost been a year since WordCamp Phoenix last year. And at WordCamp Phoenix, I gave a talk about underrepresentation and why it
Mm.
matters. And during that talk, I talked about Black press and how Black press has really carved out a space for this group of underrepresented folks within the WordPress community, and how they've got, a Slack channel, and they've got the website that directs people to different places. They're starting to do meetups. So they've had meetups at different, especially flagship WordCamps and things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
As a result of that talk, first of all, I was so humbled during that talk because people were crying about some of the, so
Mhm.
touched by some of the work that's being done in the community. And I was so happy to be like the mouthpiece for that, right? But two or three different people, I want to say maybe three different people approached me one-on-one afterwards at three different times, like not en masse, right? To say, is there a space like Black Press for the LGBTQ plus community? And I said, I don't really know, but let me look around and see. And it turns out there wasn't. So not necessarily at large, right? There's out in tech, there's other places that are outside of WordPress that encompass WordPress because it's tech. But we didn't really have some place for the LGBTQ plus community within WordPress. So we created one, lgbtqpress.com. We've invited folks to be there. There are a lot of people from the community in there. There's a couple of us who are allies in there as well.
Mhm.
And my goal, and it's in process, it's a work in process, right? So as an ally, I don't want to be like, I'm building the website for you, because that's not my place, right? I want the community to build what they need. And we started a Slack channel, those kinds of things. And that was, to me, felt like the beginning of good things that could happen. And it's a slow growth. I'll admit that. And
But
it's,
you're creating the space for it to happen, which I think is
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, and it's exciting to watch. Like, a Black person can't not be Black when they walk down the road,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, but for somebody in the LGBTQ plus community, you're either out or you're not. And if you're
Mhm.
not, even joining a space like that can feel scary because you don't know who else is in it, that kind of thing. So I think that the growth for that might be a little bit slower, just because it's like, is it safe? Is it an okay place? What's happening there? And so it takes a little bit of time. But what you're doing and what you approached me with a few weeks ago, I think is one of those things that really moves the needle. So I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to let you talk about it, and then we're going to talk about it together after you describe what's going on.
Yeah, I do want to just give you major props for starting that space because I think whenever, I've been in the last year as well trying to figure out ways to empower the queer community within WordPress and have tried a couple different things and fits and starts and haven't really found a place to properly land. And as I was working on this next idea, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in this Slack channel. I think there's a website. Like, I was like, I know I've shared it before with different folks. And for you, you just completely, for folks who don't know, like Michelle just completely was like, here's access to the site. What do you need? How can I help? Whatever you need. And that's huge. Like as someone who's like, to create a website, to do all this sort of stuff, to build a community, it takes a lot of work. Community building is a lot of work. And to be able to use what you have created and to step in there and to step into that container has been super helpful. And I'm really excited because it's one thing that happens, in my opinion, with DEI efforts is they can get too scattered.
Mm.
So you have like different groups going in different directions rather than like a concerted effort. And as much as possible, I try to have a concerted effort.
Mhm.
Go where people already are, further what folks are already doing, find areas of overlap, build in intersectionality as much as possible. Because ultimately, if I go off in a weird direction and no one follows, it doesn't help anyone. And so
Right.
that's kind of where things have landed. And it's for some more behind the scenes stuff. This idea actually originally started because I've been on various release squads. And when I first started on the release squads and with the 6.4 underrepresented genders release, there was a lot of behind the scenes questioning that was happening where it was like, is this what we're supposed to be doing? How do we do this? And I suddenly realized I was a more tenured release team member. And I kind of had this idea of like, wouldn't it be cool if I could, you know, hold a Zoom meeting during release parties and like talk to people about what's going on and like create a safe space to ask those questions from folks who are underrepresented and who are queer. So the idea originally started to sponsor folks as like a sponsorship format rather than a mentorship format of come on in, we're going to get you into the release. I will be your like guide and we will help you contribute to the release. We will like show you behind the scenes stuff, talk about what's happening each week and kind of bring folks into the release process. And as I'm brainstorming this idea, I went to Queeromattic, which is I work for Automatic. It's the, we call it the Automation Resource Group, but ERG for more like corporate terms. And I started talking to some of the leadership there, and I'm one of the group of leads. We have a very like informal leadership group of like a group of us who are just kind of trying to keep things going. And everyone was like, that would be awesome. Let's do it. And as I started to get the funding together, I started kind of looking around the WordPress space, and I started talking to Hari and Nyoko, who are also colleagues at Automatic. And they mentioned this wonderful mentorship program that they were restarting. And it kind of was like the stars aligned. It was like, I'm going to do this, again, me going rogue, I'm going to do this brand new thing so we can get money to queer people. We can get people into the release squads. Like we can actually sponsor people, give them real, tangible, real world experience that could help them with their career, that could get excitement about WordPress, give them access to stuff. And then they were like, we're doing this mentorship program. Like, how can we help advise you on this? So I could learn from them. And then as we started talking, we are like, why don't we just merge? like I was like, yeah, that's a really, let's just like, again, kind of doubling each other's efforts. How can we empower more folks? And so the whole empowerment grant is essentially anyone who wants to, you know, go and do the mentorship program can still do that.
Right.
For LGBTQ plus folks, they can also apply to this grant to get paid to do that. And I think why that's important is a lot of times underrepresented folks face a lot of financial barriers, and it's not a perfect system what I have set up. So like, again, feedback is welcome. This is like V1, you know, open bugs, open enhancement requests. I want to know how we can make this better. And like right now, I'll say that we don't have someone who has applied yet. And so this is part of what I'm trying to figure out. This is part of how these efforts work, is like, okay, maybe next time we need to announce it way sooner. Or next time we need to go out into different spaces. And so I really appreciate you holding space for this. And I want to encourage anyone who is not queer to share this, because we need to get it to the right people. If it's not for you, it's for someone else, and maybe someone will see it. But the whole point is to help folks who are excited, who want to contribute to WordPress, to have the chance to and to get paid to. And a lot of that comes from my own lived experience, where I had people take a chance on me, and I have learned a lot in different jobs where I've been paid to learn, and not everyone gets that luxury. And so this is like a very small way, with $500 for a 6-week program. At the end of the program, you'll have to get set up, the entire program, you're set up with a mentor, someone who's experienced and seasoned in WordPress. And at the end, you come up with like a contribution plan. So you're able to move forward with support. And part of my secret hope is that we could hold some calls with folks who are part of this program, who are with other queer core contributors. So people who have been longtime sponsored, and get them kind of connected with, again, like not just like seasoned leadership, but folks who are also part of the community and who are seasoned leaders. So that's like I could rant about this for like 2 hours.
Go for it.
I'm very excited about it.
It's a very exciting thing. It's the mentorship program itself is an exciting thing. And I remember asking at WordCamp Europe last year, like, it's funny because they don't do it this way anymore, where you line up with the microphones and things like that. But as a disabled person, like, I couldn't even get to the floor of that venue. So the only place I could be was at the very top, like third mezzanine or whatever you call it. And all of a sudden I look to my left and somebody's standing there with a microphone. I'm like, oh, they've got my number. They always know that I have a question to ask. And I asked about mentorship because people are always asking me, you know, one-on-one, if I would mentor them, and I just don't have capacity to mentor like 50 people, and I get probably 50 requests a year. But how we could start to build something like that. Like I built WPSpeakers.com last year, and people are like, oh, is there a way to do mentorship through there? And I'm like, well, no, not yet, but I have limited capacity for things that don't bring money, right? That aren't my full-time job. But it's like, so I asked a question about that, and Joseph was like, as a matter of fact, we have this thing launching like in 2 weeks. And I was like, did I tee that up for her without even knowing or what? But what an exciting thing just to have the mentorship program available, period. And
Yeah.
then for you to come in and say, hey, we're also going to sponsor people who apply. So you do have to apply for both the mentorship
Hmm.
program and the grant. It's not one or the other. If you want the grant,
Yeah.
you have to be accepted to both, right? So that's the
Hmm.
first thing.
Hmm.
But to be able to say, I want to do this so much, and people believe in me enough to actually sponsor me through this, there's a financial incentive to get through this and to contribute, I think is a
Hmm.
beautiful thing. So kudos to you for even thinking it up and your whole team for backing it.
It's been a
And
huge group effort. I have to say, like, folks on the community team also really sharpened the idea too. Like, I brought the idea to the community team and during one of their meetings, and Gus brought up really good feedback about how we could set up funding structure. Patricia also chimed in. Naoko and Hari have been super helpful. Like, it really has been this, like, folks from the Queeromattic side, because of course, I'm dealing with like the Queeromattic side. How do we need a contract? Like, there's a lot of behind the scenes there. It's a huge number of folks who have come together and have like yes anded, and yourself included, where it's like, how do we make this happen? Yes, this is a good idea. And especially with a lot of the layoffs happening, like in the future, I would
yeah,
love to like give more money, or like in different forms, or maybe we have like a sponsorship for a queer person to contribute to core. I don't know, like there's all these things that as someone like yourself who's been in the space for a long time, I'd love to know what's on your mind too. And I'd love to
yeah.
like also find ways to collaborate with Black Press, because like there's a certain point where I don't
Right.
want someone picking an identity. Like, I want this to be something where
Mhm.
someone can kind of show up in the WordPress space who is underrepresented, period, and get support
Yeah,
for
for
all of
sure.
who they are, you know?
For sure. And one of the things that we talk about at underrepresented in tech.com is that you aren't necessarily underrepresented in just one area, right? So like I'm an
Mhm.
older woman in WordPress in tech, and that's two right there. Plus I'm a disabled person. And so like, oh, I check
Yeah.
3 boxes of underrepresentation, and
Mhm.
so there are Black queer people, there are Black disabled people, there are Black queer disabled people, like all of
Mhm.
that exists, and you don't have to choose one one pillar to cling to. You
Yeah.
can be in more than one area, and creating resources that are open to people across different areas that might also tick more than one box, for example, I think is just brilliant. And well, as soon as you told me the idea, I mean, we were texting back and forth through Slack. You couldn't see the grin on my face, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. It's exciting to see things grow and prosper, right? So like when you launch a little project and like people start to use it and start to work within it,
Mhm.
the excitement for watching like this little baby this little egg that you laid or whatever seed that you planted start
Mhm.
to really grow and flower and everything is very exciting.
Yeah,
One of the
creating those
questions,
spaces is huge.
it really is, right? To be able and for it to feel like a safe space and not feel
Mhm.
like, but be a safe space so that people feel safe within it is super
Yeah.
important. And to be able to say, I mean, I'm sure there are queer people in the world who wouldn't even apply for this because they're not ready for the world to know that that label applies to them. And for those
Yeah.
people, that's fine. Nobody's trying to make you do anything that you don't want to do, right?
Yes.
Um, Super important to acknowledge that first and foremost. But the idea of just supporting people in another financial way. Allie and I did an episode of Underrepresented in Tech in the fall where we talked
Mhm.
about how much more expensive life is as an underrepresented person. You
Mhm.
know,
Yep.
so if you are an underrepresented person and you have to buy shoes, for example, her whole thing was work boots, and you need work
Mm.
boots to get a job because you're unemployed. So you spend $20 to get the cheapest pair of work boots you can. But somebody who's privileged and coming from money could afford the $200 pair of work boots. Well, as a $20 pair of work boots, I'm going to replace those 10 times before that person who spent 200 might replace theirs. So
Yeah.
I've spent so much money along the way, and I have to keep spending money. So having the support like this and yes, is it life-changing money? It isn't thousands of dollars that's
Yeah.
life-changing money. It's not going to
Yeah.
pay your mortgage, but it is going to help. And it's going to give you that support that feels like it's not just in in words. It's not just speak. It's not just lip service. It's
And
actual
that's
support
what
that's
I'd love to know from
backing.
folks, if they're like, I need, you know, for this to be reasonable, I need more money. Like that is also something I can go back and say, okay, right now I can sponsor up to 4 folks for this. What if we only do 2 and instead give $1,000? Like there's ways
Mhm.
of getting feedback and interacting with this that like I
Yeah.
really want to hear from folks. And like I think you bring up
And
such a good point around like the cost of it, and also people who may not be ready to come out. Like, and if
right.
you're not ready and you still want support, like ping me and Zazu on WordPress Slack, nomad.blog is my website. Like reach out to folks. You don't need to be out to get support and to like
Right.
learn more. Like I don't, you
Right.
know, I get, I am lucky that I was able to come out. I think it's a huge privilege. And so yeah, that is like, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something I've wondered about too, is like, what about the folks, whether country or family or social
Right.
situations or whatever, that they can't, like, they wouldn't want that stamp of like the announcement, you know? Like it
Yeah.
might just be, maybe we announce it privately. Maybe that's how part of it goes. It's like, you don't know who has
Mhm.
this grant. Um,
Right.
you know,
Well,
there's a lot of again, there's a lot of ways this could look. So,
over the last year, I raised over, I want to say close to $6,000 just through my
oh,
selfie challenges that I do at WordCamps, right? And it
it's
started
really
as a
cool.
silly thing, like I want pictures of people, but I don't want to always be the one to ask people to take pictures with me. Well, this
Mhm.
way, people want to take pictures, and I'm donating money towards sponsoring people
Yeah.
to WordCamps, right? So I sponsored over 12 people, maybe 12 or
Wow.
13 people, partially, into WordCamps last year all over the world. And my goal was never to write publicly that these people needed money, because that was
Mhm.
not my business to share. So people
Yeah.
got that money without, I mean, some people thanked publicly to the group of people who donated, and that was wonderful. But other people, their finance is not my business. They
Yeah.
needed a little
Yeah.
help. I was able to do that through the money that other people supported this with
Mhm.
as well. So I think this is like that. It's like you can be part of
Yeah.
this without having to out yourself as needing support, as being part of the queer community, any of those
Mhm.
things, right? So, I mean, yes, there will be people who know, you will know,
Yeah.
whoever else is evaluating will know, but you are safe people to be able to know that,
Mhm.
and you are not looking to out people as part of this.
No, definitely not. Yeah. I'm curious, like from your perspective, what other avenues, if you could like dream up, you have a pot of gold kind of thing, like
Mhm.
how would you, what other ideas have come up, or areas that I don't maybe know about, or that you've seen like tried in the past that maybe would make more sense now? Like I'm always curious about those like reoccurring problems and opportunities that come up. I don't know if
Yeah,
anything comes to mind.
I think people attending events is another one, right? So
Yeah.
sponsorship through mentorship, things like that. There are so many people who want to speak, who want to organize word camps, or even just attend them, who
Mm.
just can't afford to do that. And sometimes it's underrepresented status, sometimes they've been laid off. I mean, there's so many things, and attending a word camp might be the place where you find your next job or opportunity.
Yeah.
And so that is definitely another place. And I think being able to sponsor specifically underrepresented folks to that, and that's what I was doing, right? So like I wasn't sponsoring, no offense white guys, but I wasn't sponsoring straight white males to word camps, right?
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
was all underrepresented folks from around the world, and in some cases it was $100, and in others it was up to 500, depending on the needs and how far they were traveling to be involved in those things. And they were all either organizers or speakers, so helping to get them to those places. So I think there are definitely other opportunities. The challenge is raising the money usually, and finding the ways,
Mm.
finding the people, and sponsorship this year is really difficult to get sponsorship for events. But I think individuals are much more likely to help other individuals than to ask companies to constantly be giving handouts. I love when companies want to, absolutely. And there are companies who have given me money to help sponsor those people through the selfie
Yeah.
challenge. And I give them props and I thank them, and they get their payback in a way for helping out. But individuals, I've raised far more money from people saying, I want to donate and I don't want my name associated with it. I just want to do good. And I think that that's been phenomenal. But raising the money has always been the challenge, which is why I asked you, like, so if companies want to contribute, how can they do that? And you're like, nope, it's not open for that yet. At least not at this point. That's not something we're looking to do. So talk a little bit about the decision of how you were going to raise the money and how that's happening.
Yeah, and that's a lot of that I'm deferring to Gus, who's a part of the Open Collective group. I don't know as much about him. He's just been hugely helpful with
Nice.
navigating this. And at times being like, I think we need to set up a funding structure first before this. And I'm like, I hear you, but there's a deadline and this money is for us, it's use it or lose it. And I'm like, maybe this can be the pioneering thing that then there's momentum for us to set up a funding structure, because there's people being like, I want to donate to, I want to donate to. And I have heard from one person who emailed me who already is like, let me know how I can help. And so I'm kind of keeping a list of those folks because it's not meant to be exclusive. It just honestly,
Right.
it's one of those things like we're trying this because ultimately I don't want to take money if we don't have something that's like,
Right.
if we get no one to apply to this, that's something to be aware of. We need to pivot. And I would rather, put money that like I am a part of within Automatic on the line rather than someone else's money. Like that is
Right.
something that like, we can be a bit more, I've worked at Automatic for almost 10 years. Like I know how that works a bit better. So I know how to kind of navigate that internally and also hopefully more in the community. Like the whole aim though is to kind of pave this path, see how it goes, see if it's something we can kind of build up. And then I can imagine in the future, like the mentorship program, similar to, I think Gus mentioned maybe Drupal. I don't know the details. It's an area that I jump into a lot of areas within WordPress, but don't always go as deep as I can, especially during a WordPress release cycle, which we're in right now.
Right.
But there's other mentorship programs.
When are we not in a WordPress release cycle?
I know it feels like it's never ending. But yeah, like that to me, the hope in the future is like imagine maybe all the mentorship stuff is paid. Maybe there's different levels based on like what you need or what you don't need. Like you could kind of choose that. I don't really know how that's going to work in the future. And that's something that the folks who are running the mentorship program, I'm deferring to them. But I am very game to help as much as possible for setting up funding properly, giving funding, facilitating that in the future. And kind of, keeping that list of folks and being like, hey, we're ready. This is how you go. This is how you give. This is how you can share about it. This is the language you can use. Here's what we're looking for. So it's kind of like a not yet. It's like, we don't really have a place for that money to go within this specific initiative. But I think kind of like when things are ready, we can get that momentum going. And so I feel like we're in that building phase where it's like, what is the appetite for this? And also, as you were talking about the sponsoring folks to go to WordCamps, I'm remembering that years ago, Queeromattic, we set up a fund to sponsor queer folks to go to WordCamps, and then COVID happened. So I was a part of that initial setup years ago. And yeah, I think there's even like a landing page, or I think I had to take down the landing page on automatic.com because we had a whole thing set up to sponsor folks for the flagship events and all this sort of stuff. We'd pay for hotel and flight and everything. And I'm like, man, we got to bring that back. Like, or
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
we also like reach out to someone like yourself who's already doing the work and say like, hey, we can contribute X amount of money to this. And so we should follow up afterwards and see what we can do there. Cause that's, again, we have this money to use and I want to make sure it's going towards stuff that benefits the WordPress community. And right now, we do have like sponsorships with folks like Out in Tech. I'm on like the board, a squad board for Lesbians Who Tech. So there are different areas that we're involved in. But ultimately, like WordPress has very much changed my life and I think changed the lives of a lot of folks that I work with within Queeromattic. And I think everyone's just stoked about like, yeah, let's do it. If you have the capacity to make this happen, let's go. So yeah, I think in the future, we'll see a lot more of this stuff pop up. And I'm just seeing this as like the beginning and trying to find areas where there is momentum and we can align with initiatives where the funding would be helpful.
Yeah, pilot programs are like that, right? So we're not looking to get everybody all in. We're looking to figure it out. How does it look this time? And then grow it from there for sure, which makes perfect sense. So there might be opportunities for people in the future to contribute to this. I think one of the things, and this is one of the things that I don't want to say worried about, but considered, I guess is a better question in the past, is I don't want people supporting things because they want to look good for supporting things. Right. So there are companies who have wanted to contribute to underrepresentedtech.com in the past, but it wasn't a good fit because they just wanted to say, look at how, accepting we are, look at how we're supporting, something like that. And so it really needs to be, I don't know what, it's not really tokenization at that point, but something like that, right? It's like, it's giving them a badge of honor that's not deserved in a way. So there's got to be some vetting of the people who want to contribute and why they want to contribute instead of being a look what I do. You can't say that we don't, we're not all inclusive because we've given money to somebody. But then you look at their company and they're like 98% white straight males, right? So then it's like, but are you really? So some of those questions, and
Yeah.
it's not that we don't want them to grow. It's not that we don't want them to be able to participate in things, but you've got to put your money where your mouth is too. So it's not just about the money. So yeah,
Yeah, I
there's a
totally
lot to
agree.
consider for sure. For sure.
Mhm.
So you mentioned a little bit about what's expected. What is expected of somebody? What does the application process look like? Not for the mentorship program. They can look at that on their own. They can look at this post as well. Of course, we'll put all of this in the show notes. But what does the point of I've arrived at the form to I've just finished the mentorship program? What does that timeline look like?
It's about 6 weeks. So let me pull up exactly the dates, but it's February 19th to March 29th. And the program lasts that duration. And then I imagine I would like to do, this is me kind of riffing, but it's in the back of my mind, is like I would definitely want to do a post program. Was this helpful? What would you change? What support did you need extra that maybe wasn't thought of that like we could provide? Because I do, I run hallway hangouts. I do have some capacity to help mentor folks. Like my original
Mhm.
idea was going to be me single-handedly every week mentoring a group of people. So like this is actually way scaled back from what I was
Yeah.
originally thinking. So I have extra capacity, and ultimately I want to have that. I could see like another week added on if people want to async or getting on a Zoom call. But yeah, it's a pretty like packed. It aligns with the release really well. I think the release is like March 26th. I have a lot of dates in my head right now.
Mhm.
March 26th, I think, is when the next release goes out. Don't quote me on that. I
No
can't remember that off
worries.
the top of my
Sometimes
head.
those things move too. So
Yeah. Hopefully not this one, but yeah.
what would be
And
the
so,
requirement of somebody at the end? So they go through the mentorship program. Do they have to attend every mentor meeting?
oh yeah,
Like
okay.
what does that look like?
Yes, thank you for directing me.
Mhm.
In my mind, I would expect, and this is something I'd actually want to rely on the mentorship program owners to be like, is this person in good faith completing enough of the contributions that you would say they completed? Are you counting them as someone who has completed the program? And so that's where I think there is like a nice partnership here, where like we're providing the funding, but I'm not trying to be overly prescriptive. I'm trying to lean on the folks who are doing this work to speak to whether it's been completed. And so in terms of even selecting people, in terms of all that sort of stuff, it will be done in joint collaboration with them. And by the end, in terms of selection, I will tell you, like, I am always on the side of, you know, not be super strict. Like, I don't believe in like, I believe in a good faith effort, and that can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And I don't like to be overly prescriptive on it. And so I think the mentorship program can like default to what they think is true. And I also think there's a certain point of, that's something we'll have to figure out as we go. Like I can't
Mhm.
say exactly. And also the mentorship program is new.
Right.
So it's kind of an all around new thing, but I would err on the side of like good faith effort, if that makes sense. And what that looks like, I
So
would say probably
yeah.
it's more than 50% or 60% of the sessions kind of thing.
So you're not asking them for like a capstone project. They don't have to write you up a report at the end or anything like that.
No, I
Maybe
don't. If they wanted to write a blog post at the end and kind of talk about the experience, but also again, that goes back to like, do they want to be out? Like, and
sure.
they might be brand new to the WordPress community.
Mhm.
In my mind, I think getting feedback and helping pay it forward, in that way, honest
Mhm.
feedback is the best, to me. So
Yeah. And how does the payout work? Is it at the beginning when they've selected, or is it at the end when they've completed?
it is at the end, so it's upon completion, and I went back and
Makes
forth on
sense.
this. But yeah, I was like, ultimately, I want to give money to folks who show up as much as they can.
Mhm.
And I don't just want to be giving out money where there's not follow through, and then we end up in this
Mhm.
messy, like I could end up spending time tracking down folks who we gave money to who weren't able
Yeah.
to actually participate during this period of time. And so I don't, I'd rather spend time on other stuff if I'm going to pick my battles.
Makes
But there's
perfect
pros
sense
and
to
cons
me.
to it, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like you said, it's one of those things where you want people to go through it. If they are taking full advantage of the mentorship program, the money's a bonus. What they're really gaining is the insights from their mentor
100%.
into the program.
Yeah.
And so it's the incentive for them to actually do that work as opposed to here's money, do what you want with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Um, So we are up against a tight deadline for this mentorship program because the deadline to apply is February 7th. We are recording this on January 29th. I still have to get this over to get it all processed and posted up. So by the time you see this, you may have just a few short days, up to a week to apply. So I encourage you to do that. We've been putting it out on socials through Post Status. We've put it out and I've put it out in a bunch of different places as well. We're going to put it out on Underrepresented in Tech this week so people can see all about that, of course. And because we want to try to get as many people applying for this as possible, to at least 2 or 3, right? So we can get a decent cohort in through this mentorship session. This cohort, I guess, is the right word. If we don't get anybody this time because of the short turnaround time, I assume this is going to hold over to the next mentor application process.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking with that. I definitely am committed to seeing this done a couple of times. And I don't see any like pushback from the Queeromattic folks. As you can imagine, queer people are not like thriving right now. Like it is a tough time in the world, with especially, in different countries where there's laws being passed. So like I think if anything, our Queeromattic group is like still there, proud and queer, but also like, I think everyone's dealing with a lot, like personally. So right now, this was a big initiative that folks were like, if we have the capacity to do it, great. Because I think we are on lower capacity with everything going on. I think a lot of folks are spending time in their respective communities, trying to fight the good fight. So I see this as something that we can continue doing, like budget wise, if that makes sense. Like I feel comfortable speaking to that. Like if it doesn't happen now, it could happen in the future. We could change the money amounts. We can mess around with this stuff. So I think when you see this initial idea, know that it's like meant to be given feedback on too.
Excellent. So if people are interested in learning more, how do they find out? And if they're interested in giving you feedback and maybe having some interaction with you to talk about it, how does all of that happen?
Yeah, so your lovely site, the lgbtqpress.com, there is a post about this. So if you go to news,
it's the only post, so it's hard to miss. For now, there will be more.
There will be more. Yeah, you'll see a link where there's actually a link there. It's like if you want to talk to someone, you can contact me. But my site is nomad.blog. There's a contact me page. I think it's like say hi in the menu. I am not always the fastest responder because I don't believe in like instant response times. It's just like a philosophy of mine, but I will give you a real response and I will respond genuinely. And I try to, especially for this kind of stuff, when we're on a short deadline, get back to folks really quickly. But yeah, I'm very dedicated to figure out ways that we can get money and resources and connections for queer people in WordPress. So please share what comes to mind, what you see. And especially around like intersectionality, like I'm extremely white. I have a lot of lacunas and I don't always see everything. And so I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is how we can potentially use this as also a way to kind of start hammering away at that, because I don't want that to be missed either. But yeah, otherwise, just even if it's like a word of encouragement, that's also helpful.
Always.
Like that's also, I love those too. I'm like, oh, great. But yeah, please reach out. Please, like anyone who engages deeply on this stuff, it means a lot. Like I fear disengagement more than anything else. And so when people, even if it's just like, I had someone write me a message that was just like, I don't, I wish you well, but here's all the reasons why, like, it's hard for me to, be game with this. This was my experience and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, thank you for sharing this. This is something I need to consider. It's like maybe queer people have been turned away in the past and I missed that. And like, I don't know that experience. Like, thank you for giving me that insight. How do we work on that? And there might be ways of doing it. So all of it's
and like you
welcome and help.
said, all of the different backgrounds, the different cultures, the different countries, and all of that people come from. And there's different culture in my town versus 3 towns over, right? As far as how people work with any underrepresented group, but the LGBTQ plus community for sure. I always say that queer community sounds so much easier, faster to say. So maybe I'm going to switch the way I talk. But our lived experiences are never invalidated by people in the groups that you and I are talking about, by me, by you, and the people that we represent. We don't ever invalidate those kinds of experiences. We are not always aware that they exist. And so learning from people who have those lived experiences is one way that we can help make the world a better place. So if you are somebody that wants to have those conversations, please have those conversations so that we can learn and make things better for sure.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I just, yeah, I deeply appreciate all the support and all the support from you. I do just want to like reiterate that. Like it's been really,
Well, thank
really,
you.
really helpful to when I was first thinking about all this idea, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to set up this, I'm gonna have to set up that. And I was like, oh my God, wait. Or
There's already a
maybe
space.
Michelle would be this. Yeah. And I was like nervously
That's
like,
what it's
I think
for.
people are gonna, yeah, and I was it's
That's
just
what the whole
huge
space
to
is
have that.
about.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Oh,
it's
my
been
pleasure.
awesome.
The other
And
thing
again, thank you.
my pleasure. The other thing I did want to point out is this is for mentees, not for mentors at this point in time. I don't know, maybe
That's
someday
fair.
you'll open it up for mentors as well.
Yeah.
But this first pilot program, and as we work through this first one, is for mentees. So if you are somebody who wants to join to be mentored, that is the way to do that then.
Mhm.
And then I think that was, I don't think I have any other questions for you, unless there's anything else you wanted to add. I'm just super excited about it. And I thank you for, being the voice of your group of people
Mhm.
who are bringing this out for the world and for people to consider joining. And I'm gonna say it selfishly in a way, but I love that it's like we're doing this thing and it's not because we're trying to raise money to do anything else. We want to help people, and I think that that's
Yeah.
really an amazing thing for you and Queeromattic folks to be
Yeah,
able
and
to
just keep
come and do
like
that.
we have funds and we want to use them and we want to figure out how to help folks. So like I'm always yeah, here to hear ideas and to figure out what we can do. And I do it's just really important to me that we like start turning the tide. We're like rather than underrepresented gender releases, which is great. I love that initiative. It's like I want every single person who is on that release squad to like be on future ones. Like how do we keep people? How do we like empower people? And I do think a lot of the stuff is financial. And like maybe that's something we do in the future. We sponsor someone
Mhm.
to be on a release. I don't know. We're just making stuff
Yeah,
up at this point. But
I know.
yeah, I'm very
The
excited about
sky's
it.
the limit. If you have
That's the
ideas,
limit. Yeah.
bring us the ideas too, because you never
Yeah.
know who might be somebody who'll be like, I love that. How can I help? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Or that would help me. Like that's also super helpful to hear.
Yeah.
It's like this is a blocker for me. Can this I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it,
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So whatever your ideas are, whatever your blocks, whatever your experiences are, bring them so we can make things better for underrepresented folks and especially for the queer community. And thank you so much for taking the time to kind of talk through this too. I love, like I said to you at the beginning, like, I don't have any questions. I'm going to think of them as we go. We're just going to shoot from the hip and have a conversation. I think sometimes those are the best ways to get information to people because you can hear the passion, you can hear everything about what people are doing and why it's important to those of us who are involved, allies and otherwise, of course. So yeah, so
Mhm.
let us know if you've got ideas, hit us up with them and we're going to be as able to be as responsive as possible. I am not somebody who's behind this. It is Anne and Queeromattic. But if you can't get in touch with somebody and you want to get in touch through me, I am always available to help make those connections as
Thank
well.
you
So
for being open to that too.
of course, that's what I do. But yeah, so thanks for being here. We'll see everybody. I don't this my podcast, I guess is what we call it through post status
Mhm.
is sporadic. It's what I have ideas and things that I can help with. So I won't be able to say like on the next episode of because I do that on my other shows. But it's been a pleasure to have you here and to learn more and to be able to be part of the voice that gets things heard. So thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see everybody else out and about in the WordPress community. Until then, stay cool.